Do you want to play guitar in a church worship band? Here are 10 challenges you're going to have to deal with. Hey, I'm Nate Savage, and I've been playing church gigs for a long time, longer than I care to admit. But if you're going to play this type of gig on a regular basis, there are some things that you really need to be aware of and some challenges that you are going to face. And this doesn't just go for church gigs. This goes for any type of gig where you have to learn a lot of songs in a very short amount of time on a recurring basis, like a cover gig, for example. I am going to be addressing all the issues we're talking about in this video later on in more detail on other videos on this channel, so don't forget to like this video and subscribe so you know when a new video comes out. Also, if you're having trouble with any one specific area of your playing, head over to natesavage.com. You can book a personal one-on-one Skype video lesson with me. And don't forget to leave your comments below for tips on playing in a worship band as we go. All right, number 10 challenge is learning a lot of material, up to 6 or 7 songs every week. That's a lot of stuff to dig into on a regular basis. And you know, church guitarists are known for not being the best guitar players out there, and I really don't think that's fair, because what other gig besides like a cruise ship or a regular steady cover gig do you have out there where you have to learn 5 or 6 songs a week? The songs usually aren't that tough, but it is a lot of material to get through. But there are some things you can do to make this easier on yourself. Number 1, do a lot of active and passive listening before you even get your hands on the guitar. So like as soon as you get your worship set, make a playlist if you don't have one already. Listen to it while you're driving, exercising, cooking dinner, so you start to ingrain and absorb the tunes before you even get your hands on the guitar. And then also set aside some time to just do some really active listening where you're not doing anything else. You're just listening, paying very close attention to what's happening in the song, where it's going, and what your parts are doing. Another thing that can really help with this is to break your practice sessions up into multiple shorter practice sessions. That way you have to recall the tunes more often, and it'll help you remember the parts and where they're going. In addition to that, take the chord charts that you have. You know, there's not a lot of information on chord charts, and just make as many notes as possible to give yourself every fighting chance that you can to really nail the songs. Number 9, pedal boards or pedal board configurations. When you're first getting into playing worship music, or if you've been playing for a while and you're just starting to play in church, it can be really easy to think that you need all the latest and greatest pedals to get a really good sound, and that's just not true. And this reminds me of what I see on Facebook or Instagram on Sunday mornings. I see the most elaborate, expensive pedal boards in the world, and a lot of them cost more than my first car. Heck, a lot of them cost more than the car that I have right now. But that's really cool to have that, and I love expensive pedals and having lots of them, but you really don't need all that. A really basic setup can help you get a long way at a church gig, and my wife's pedal board is a really good example of this. All you really need is a volume pedal, a tuner pedal, and then maybe going into a drive pedal or 2, and then a delay pedal at the end, going out to your amp or amp modeler. And if you have reverb on your amp, that's cool too. And let me turn this on real quick. This is my normal church pedal board minus one expression pedal, but this is all I use. The volume pedal, tuner, drive pedal, and then an HX stomp. All I really need is the HX stomp and maybe the volume pedal though. The rest is just because I like it. But sounds fantastic, and the only things I have going here are the volume pedal, drive pedal's not even on, tuner's on, I have a delay block here, a couple reverbs, and then just the amp that it's going through. And if you're just starting out with this, just get a volume pedal, tuner, and a delay pedal directly into the amp. And if you need to back off on your drive, you can set it to where it's a little gritty or a little gainy, then just back off on your volume or your volume pedal to bring it down and clean it up a little bit, and that'll get you going. All right, since we just talked about pedals, challenge number 8 is how do I make those holy whale noises? And it's really simple if you have just the basic setup that I mentioned with your pedals in the last little tip that I had there. But the holy whale noises, you've all heard them. But it's kind of an essential thing if you're in a church worship guitarist, because you need to create that ambient, really worshipy sound. And all you have to do, it's like being on my neck pickup when I do this, but I have quite a bit of delay on here, and it's always set for dotted 8 notes. And that's just a cliche that worship guitarists do, but it's for a really good reason. It really fills out your sound when you have, you know, your tempo is going along like this. If you tap that in, it kind of throws things off and just helps it sound really spacious. But all you have to do is set that up, maybe a dotted eighth note delay, quite generous. I think it's the mix is on like 36%, which is a little bit higher for me. Normally keep it around 20 something. But all you have to do is turn your volume pedal down, hit a chord, and swell it in. And that delay just kind of kicks things up to the next level and have a little bit of reverb on there too. But you can do that with the chords. Or single notes too. But that's the best and fastest way to get that. And put your volume pedal before your drive pedal. If you wanted to kick it up a notch as far as the intensity, you can always throw that drive pedal in there too. Challenge number 7 is getting beyond using just basic open chords and bar chords. A really good example of this is a 1-5-6-4 progression in the key of G. A lot of acoustic players would play that like this: G, D major, E minor, C. A lot of electric players would play it with regular bar chord shapes: G, D, E minor, C, or maybe even like this: G, D, E minor, C. But a lot of people, especially if you're newer to playing guitar, get kind of stuck in that, and they're like, well, how do I get more creative and stop using just those basic shapes? What I would suggest doing is adding the movable D bar chord shape into your chord repertoire. And it's the same thing. You just take your G chord and you move it around to where your root notes match whatever chord you need. So instead of playing a G, D, E minor, C like this, I could put the D chord shape in there for the G instead. So G, D, E minor, C. And really a lot of this comes down to knowing your performance positions, what I call performance positions on the guitar, so you can get creative and you start using different shapes other than, you know, your standard bar chords, standard open chords. But getting just started with that D chord and moving it all around the fretboard is a really good place to start breaking out of those big chunky bar chord shapes. So if you're playing with an acoustic player or another electric guitar player, they can cover this kind of stuff, and you can do something like more like this. Challenge number 6 is transposing songs, and this is pretty inevitable. There's no way a worship leader is going to be able to sing all of the songs they pick for the week in the same key that they're written, and that's just not feasible. So you need to be able to move songs to different keys. In addition to that, I don't think I've ever been to a church gig once where I've shown up and there's not a replacement page from the songs that I was going over that week, where the song's in a different key. They changed it just because last minute they're like, I don't like that key. So being able to adjust to new keys really quick or transpose on the fly is really important as a worship guitarist. There are some things you can do long term to make this easier on yourself. Number 1 is understand how major keys work. And there's not a lot to it, but you do have to put in the effort to understand the theory behind it. And another thing that you can do is get to know your major keys really well. And there are a lot of them, and it's kind of hard to start out with this, but what you want to do is get used to the keys that your leader sings in the most. So if your leader sings in the keys of G and A the most, get to know all the chords in those keys really well so you can just fly between them if you need to change it, you know, from G to A or vice versa. And the last tip I have here kind of goes hand in hand with the bar chord idea we were talking about a while ago, and that's learn geometry on the guitar as opposed to just purely relying on the notes on the fretboard like G, D, E minor, and then C. So there are only 7 diatonic chords in the key in any given key, and church music usually sticks to diatonic chords. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then 7, right? If you know where those root notes are, all you have to do is slap on whatever bar chord you need, and then if it's a minor or major, and you'll be good to go. So relying on geometry instead of just strictly on what note you're playing will help a lot. It's kind of like shorthand. All right, I'm going to take my delay off here for number 5 because we're going to be talking about strumming. Challenge number 5 is knowing what strumming pattern to use. And this can be tricky. And first off, the first thing is it comes back to active listening, going in and actually listening to the tunes and picking out the strumming patterns. But that doesn't always work in a worship setting because you're showing up in a place or in an environment where the people that you're playing with may not have the songs down exactly like they are on the album. So when that happens, what do you do? What strumming pattern do you use? Well, the biggest tip I have for you here is to listen to the drummer. If the drummer's not playing exactly what's on the album, what you want to do is kind of match or harmonize what he's doing, because that's the job of the rhythm guitar. It's gonna to harmonize the beat that's going on. So if the drummer's going boom, that boom, boom, that boom, boom, that boom, boom, that boom. That's a really good place to start. It may not be the fanciest thing ever, but it's going to sound good and it's going to fit together really well. So fall back on that if you don't know what to play or if people are changing things up a little bit on you. Number 4 is getting and keeping your chops together. I know a lot of worship guitarists are kind of weekend warriors. We don't have a ton of time to practice, but the time we do have, we usually put into learning songs, so we're not necessarily working on chops or anything like that necessarily. A lot of what you can do to keep your hand in shape is to just play the chords, spend the time playing the chords with the song. A lot of these worship tunes, though, have like little lead lines and fills that you have to be able to execute on. So as a recommendation, what I would say to do is to just take 5 minutes at the beginning of each practice session just to keep your lead chops up if you're playing electric. And one really easy way to do that is to just go through the minor pentatonic scale. And I would just stick to the top 3 strings because that's where we're going to be playing most of these riffs anyways. It doesn't matter what key, just enough to keep your hand in shape and keep your coordination together. And I would do it both legato and picked. So, and go as slow as you need to have it really clean. And then pick. But spend just 5 minutes at the beginning of each practice session. It's going to be a good warm-up, and it's going to help you keep your chops dialed in. Number 3, and this is a big one for church guitar players, and that is playing with a click. That is going to be a challenge for you if you've never done it before. But there are 2 things that you can do to make this a lot easier on yourself or to get better at doing this really quickly. The first one is reach down to your Avion or whatever monitor thing you have and turn the click up until your ears are bleeding. But seriously, your click should be up to the level where you can hear it. And what your job is, as soon as you have it turned up, is to start practicing being aware of it. Just be on the front of your mind. Where is that click? Am I falling behind? Am I in front of it? Can I hear it at all? If not, turn it up. But a lot of times it just boils down to practice being aware. And that can be really tough when you have all these other things going on. Where am I in the song? What chords are coming up? What's the hook that's coming up? Practice being aware of where that click is. And the second thing you can do is, instead of just playing with click when you're at rehearsal or in a service, practice playing with the click at home and see how good you really are at doing that. In an environment like that, when you're not around other people, when you're not nervous, you can focus on that click more and make it a habit. Eventually you're going to get to the point where you can turn the click down a little bit to where it's not like an ice pick in your brain every stinking beat, but don't ever get to the point where you're like, oh, I don't need that click. My timing is good. That could be a recipe for disaster. I know I've done it when I think I'm safe. I turn it down or don't pay attention to it, and I'm like, oh, I need to get back on track. Challenge number 2 is being diplomatic in a church setting. And there are a lot of things that fall under this category. Things like being humble, showing up on time, showing up with your parts learned, supporting your leader, and following their lead instead of taking over the session if you're not the worship leader. But the biggest thing for me with this is learning how to deal with other people that, let's say maybe somebody's timing is bad. If I was in a regular cover band, I'd be like, man, fix your timing or go home. But in a church setting, you can't really do that, mostly because you're dealing with volunteers, number 1. And number 2, you're going to be seen as unchristlike if you just chop somebody's head off and say, go home until you learn your parts, or your timing is terrible. So what I've learned, something that's helped me a lot, is instead of saying, hey, is the click on in your ears? What are you doing? Instead of something like that, because I really don't have patience for that kind of stuff. That's probably why I'm not a worship leader. I'm just a guitar player. But one thing that I found that really helps me is to ask a question to the whole group, including myself. So instead of saying something like that, I might say, that was a little rough, guys. Does everybody have the click turned up in their ears? And that includes me. And it just kind of brings that up and gives everybody an opportunity to at least be aware of that. So that's one kind of diplomatic thing that has helped me over the years, is asking questions to people instead of telling people something. The number 1 challenge that church guitarists face is depending on their gear to make them better. And this kind of comes back around to the pedal thing. I don't know what it is with church guitar players, but it always seems to center around pedals. And you don't have to have the latest and greatest all strumming board, although that is fun. It's not going to make you a better guitar player. Things that will make you better are spending time with your instrument, having the songs learned when you show up to rehearsal, or just putting in the work for those performance positions and getting the riffs down, the hooks for the songs that you're playing that week. And it doesn't have to be a really complicated setup, like I said earlier. I fall into the trap of, oh, I need this, oh, I want this. But in truth be told, all I would need to show up at a church gig and have a really good sound would be maybe my HX Stomp and a volume pedal, or maybe a delay pedal, a volume pedal into my wife's Blues Junior is a good picture of it for you. That's really all you need. Everything else is just gravy on top. So that's it for the 10 challenges that worship guitarists face. I will be unpacking all of these issues more in the future in other videos, so make sure to subscribe so you can know exactly when those come out. Make sure to hit the little bell notification too to get notified, and also leave your tips below for worship guitar, so this can be a really good resource for people that are starting to get into playing in church. And if you need help or any lessons, personal one-on-one lessons, head over to natesavage.com and sign up for a lesson while they last. See you.